Hey everybody, how's it going? So it is almost said Tuesday, but it's Wednesday, September 15th, 2021. This is actually the second take of this video. I tried doing one take of it where I would play a bunch of guitar in the beginning, kind of as a cool intro, if you will, but unfortunately on this crappy webcam that I have, the damn guitar unfortunately just sounds really washed out. Didn't come through all that well. So I'm just going to talk on this one again. I don't know. I'll try to figure out some sort of solution for guitar stuff going forward, but yeah, so it might be a little while before I try playing on a video again. But as the title of this video suggests, I'm going to talk about the classic 1980s thrash metal band Defiance. And, I've been thinking about the band a lot here over the last probably week and a half, 2 weeks or so. Had a recent phone call with a close friend who I was, kind of telling her about, a personal story that I had just related to Defiance. And yesterday I was sitting around just trying to learn some like licks from Defiance's cover of Iron Maiden's Killers. Just trying to learn a little bit of Jim Adams's arpeggio solo at the end. Just trying to put that into my own playing, basically. So again, just with that, and then just telling that story to my friend recently. Just decided that I'd sit down and make a video today because I think Defiance is definitely deserving of more praise than they've gotten over their career. So a little bit of a Defiance 101, if you will, as far as I guess a short history of the band. 1989, their first album was released called Product of Society, produced by Jeff Waters of Annihilator fame. And it's interesting that such a heavy hitter, I think, as far as Jeff would be attached to the album because, I think it was kind of maybe not so much commonplace at the time to have, I think musicians from other bands actually producing your album. But it's interesting, though, kind of what happened. I know that Jeff had kind of mentioned just at different points, I think, maybe not so much in his career, but I think like on the Annihilator forum itself about 15 years ago, Jeff had mentioned producing the record and that he was extremely happy with the guitar, or excuse me, with the drum sounds, in which looking back at it, yeah, the drums actually, they, obviously they pop really well. I think it actually was arguably maybe one of their better drum sounds that they ever had, maybe second behind Beyond Recognition, which I'll mention later. But from the guitar side of things, I know that both Jeff and then Jim Adams, one of the Defiance guitar players, they all had kind of acknowledged that there was some troubled production on the guitar front. Basically, what had happened was, and again, both sides confirming this, Jeff had basically wanted the band to back off on either the volume pots on their guitars or back down on the gain on their amplifiers. Basically wanted to try to get a really clear sound, I guess, just on the main recording. And then Jeff said he would use some tricks or whatever to fatten it up in post-production. For whatever reason, and again, I'm no studio engineer or whatever, but for whatever reason, it just didn't happen in the end. And the band was reportedly very unsatisfied, with the guitar sound. Um, my retrospective thoughts on it are definitely that, amongst the four albums that Defiance recorded, the guitar sound and Product of Society is definitely the weakest out of the four, but I don't think it sounds terrible necessarily. It kind of reminds me in some ways of Anthrax's State of Euphoria, I think, again, just as far as an equalization standpoint, but maybe just with a little bit less aggression. The songs on the album, though, were cool. I think it's a good debut album. Not the greatest debut ever in thrash metal history, but certainly not the worst either by a long shot. So then there's the second album, Void Terra Firma, released in 1990. And this one was actually recorded live in the studio. And I want to say it would have been for budgetary concerns or budgetary reasons, if you will. Um, I guess just the band probably, again, not having the same budget as the first album and maybe not having the same budget as the third album that would come 2 years later. But again, they recorded live in the studio. And it's just a very interesting thing to consider, even just from that standpoint, because not only for heavy metal nowadays in 2021, but I think just an awful lot of genres in music, albums are not really recorded live in the studio anymore. And I don't know if it's because of technical standards of guitar playing or just technical standards of music in general, but, bands obviously they prefer to punch things in and take a lot of time getting everything perfect. And with good reason, I understand totally. If it's the final product, you want to get it perfect. Void Terra Firma, though, for every little quack or error that you might hear in the playing, there is a ton of attitude in the record. The guitar sound way beefier, actually maybe in some cases a little bit too much. I know the band remarked later that they were happy that the guitar sound was not weak, but that it might have been overdone a little bit. So, I guess you can kind of say from that standpoint that for everything the Product of Society lacked, I think from, again, the guitar sound standpoint, Void Terra Firma more than made up for that, and then some. And obviously, song-wise, great album. I definitely think it was an improvement over Product of Society. Definitely showing the band growing as musicians, playing a little bit more technical, and again, just beefier and heavier. So great album. And first album with vocalist Steve Esquivel. I hope I pronounced his name correctly. Steve replaced the original vocalist, Ken Elkington, who, departed the band after the first recording, Product of Society. And Steve basically would go on to be the vocalist most associated with Defiance over the years. So after that, they do successful touring, all that sort of stuff, and the band seems to be on an upward trajectory. So they start working on what was going to be their third album, Beyond Recognition. Now, Beyond Recognition was released in 1992, and unfortunately, at that point, basically at the end of thrash metal's commercial viability. So obviously, Beyond Recognition just coming out too late. And I think the band was recording, say, in probably, I'm going to say, early to mid 1991. And I know the release was supposed to be sooner than it was, but I think Steve had left the band. They were trying to get some different singers, or trying out different singers, I should say, but just not finding the right guy. And then Steve comes back and basically gives it another go, and just had a totally different voice than what he had on the second record. And I think certainly in an improvement sense, because Steve's singing and just his rough vocals in general on Beyond Recognition, just absolutely a cut or two above what you heard on Void Terra Firma. And definitely, I think from a songwriting standpoint, definitely a cut above the previous two records as well. Beyond Recognition, I think without a doubt, is the band's finest hour. Just, they got it all right. The production was perfect. The guitar sound, very thick, but still very clear, not overdone. Drums sounded excellent. You could hear the bass guitar audibly. Just everything about it, just excellent. And it was a production job courtesy of Rob Beaton, who actually produced Heathen's Victims of Deception, which came out right around the same time. So really, those two albums notable for being basically two of the heaviest in both bands' careers. So for all of the benefits that Heathen got from Rob Beaton's production job on their album, he brought that same talent over to Defiance, and again got them the best sound of their career. So after that, I don't know if Defiance broke up not long after the album came out, or maybe even potentially right before it. They kind of reconvened at different points, but it wasn't quite the same. I think they tried to play as Defiance a little bit after that, tried changing musical direction, decided that that wasn't working, or maybe not so much that it wasn't working, but just decided that it was too different from what they had been doing previously. I think they changed the name of the band to Inner Threshold, and then later to Under. I might have that backwards. They might have been Under first, and then later Inner Threshold. I don't recall for sure. Either way, though, that period from, say, 1993 to 1999, they still existed, but albeit in a much more limited capacity. They were no longer signed to a record label at that point, still playing shows, and I think recording some demos here and there, but just nothing coming together, I think. Or, obviously, just as far as the record label situation was concerned. So, band breaks up, I think 98, 99, something like that. And there was rumors in the mid-2000s about them reforming, and which eventually those rumors came to be true. Basically, all of the original members, with the exception of the drummer, they basically had a rotating cast of drummers. I think they were trying to get their original drummer, Matt Vander End, back at that point. It just didn't happen. And I know Matt later on, it might have actually even been maybe a little bit before, but had a very successful career playing on Broadway with the musical production Wicked. So, obviously a much different thing, but, obviously a good paying job in music is a good paying job in music, no matter how you cut it. So the band soldiered on with Mark Hernandez as their drummer for the fourth album, which was called The Prophecy. And, I think, again, I'm not going to call it a self-produced effort, because I know Juan Ortega was the producer of the record. He later went on to work with Machine Head, and I think he recently did some work with Exodus as well on either their last album or, maybe the one before that. I don't remember. But either way, Juan Ortega, basically kind of a rising name, I think, just currently in the modern realm of heavy metal, just working with several big acts. So, again, it's the same thing, and especially as modern production techniques and just modern record production just getting better and better and better. It's the same thing that The Prophecy had a great sound, great guitar, good drum sound, maybe a little bit too thin if I'm going to be critical about it, but not, that's not anything terrible. Again, there's been much worse drum sounds than what you heard on The Prophecy. Songwriting a little bit different, I'm not going to say it was a step backwards, just maybe a little bit more simplified, though, from a songwriting standpoint, but still with some technical and progressive flourishes here and there. I think The Prophecy is a really good album, definitely a great comeback record, actually, if I'm going to be 100% truthful about it. Does it meet the original trilogy as far as the standards, again, with songwriting and such? Maybe not quite. But I think when you understand the story of the record, though, that kind of puts it a bit more into perspective. The album was being worked on as far back as, say, late 2005 or maybe mid-2006, and their second guitar player, the Defiance's second guitar player, Doug Harrington, was actually in the middle of battling cancer at the time. I think I remember reading that he had actually participated in a writing or recording session only 3 days before he passed away in 2006. So he was basically in there right up until the very end, just trying to, be involved in the record and just spiritually trying to be there with the band. I think I later read that, just as far as his weakness, just from the condition and the treatments he was receiving, they really could only get just a little bit of, usable playing from him on the album. So I think he's actually only in like say 7 or 8 seconds of one song. But either way though, he's there in a spiritual sense. Did make it on the record, but a large majority of it done without him. And I thought that I definitely think I'm sure the band chose this for a reason. But the name, The Prophecy, I think they later kind of. I know Jim Adams later said in a posting when the band broke up in 2012 that the idea was they wanted to fulfill their promise that they made to Doug to get the album completed because he basically knew he was at the end. So I'm sure they obviously talked about it and made an agreement that they would get the album done. So they called the record The Prophecy, basically fulfilling the prophecy that they set forward that they would get this thing done and make a grand return, and play one more time for Doug's memory. So again, the album was good. I think it was a good comeback. Maybe not as warmly received in the press and just by fans as it should have been, but I thought it was good. So, want to give the band obviously props for completing it, getting it out, and kind of leads into the next portion of this video, and that's kind of my own, I guess, personal attachment to Defiance. So I remember in late 2006, it would have been right at the time that Doug Harrington passed away. It wasn't being reported heavily in the news media, or I should say the heavy metal news media at the time. I know you had blabbermouth.net and stuff like that, but I don't think they were. I don't think they were covering as much of the underground metal news at the time as they do nowadays. But I was a huge fan of the band Annihilator. I mentioned Jeff Waters earlier, who produced Product of Society. At that time in late 2006, he used to be a very frequent contributor on the Annihilator forum, just making different posts, interacting with fans, all that good stuff. I remember Jeff made a forum post in, again, late 2006. I think it was actually middle of November. Jeff made a post that was titled Condolences to Those Close to Doug Harrington. And basically in the post, talked about Doug, talked about the band Defiance, and, obviously mentioning that Doug had passed away. And I think he put up a link to the website, mentioned there was a guest book that you could, leave your comments in, all that sort of stuff. So I went over to the website and checked out the band a little bit. I don't think they had like an About Us section or anything like that. It was mainly just like latest news that they were reporting, and then the band would kind of, they would interject, make their own postings or, leave their own comments or whatever. And, so they would have some updates about the new album that they were working on that, again, later became The Prophecy. And just interviews here and there, all that good stuff. And I remember they actually had it on their website where you could download some of their albums. They had Product of Society and Beyond Recognition available for download for free for the fans. I don't know if it was a way to say thank you or maybe just a way just to get just try to distribute the albums just so people could hear them. Because I want to say that both Product of Society and Beyond Recognition were out of print at the time. So I remember as a 16-year-old kid going on the website, just reading what I could about the band, trying to, just absorb everything I could. And I went ahead and I tried to download the albums, and I'm going to say try for a very key reason. Back in the day, 2006, high-speed internet obviously was becoming a big thing. I don't think quite as big as it is nowadays, though, because, unfortunately, we were at the time restrained to having dial-up service. So I remember trying to download these songs and, it taking a long time, hours. Maybe it might have even taken a couple days, because obviously I couldn't sit on the internet at all times because you're tying up the phone line. So, downloaded the songs, burned them onto CDs or whatever, took them in my room, listened to them. And I really liked the music. I thought it was great stuff. Again, I mentioned, just the technical guitar work, great soloing styles, great mix of pentatonics and minor scales, maybe a little bit of harmonic minor in there. Just great songwriting. I think that Doug Harrington was a great guitar player. Jim Adams was and still is a great guitar player. So I think, one of the more underrated duos for guitar playing in thrash metal history. I mentioned Matt Vanderen's drumming, obviously really good. And Mike Kaufman, the bass player, never was necessarily going to be mentioned in the same breath as Cliff Burton, but we also never really got to hear maybe much of what Mike could do, maybe from a more freestyle or soloing standpoint. But Mike Kaufman obviously holding down the low end, great contributions from him as well. Just the whole band. I mentioned Steve's vocals, just the whole band, just great stuff. And, again, as a 16-year-old kid, you're listening to this for the first time, and it's like, wow, where have these guys been? How come I've never heard of this? So where I'm going with this is I remember a few months later, I think it was February of 2007, I remember going on the guest book, and, I don't think I had ever actually posted any comments about Doug's passing. So I went on the guest book and I wrote a comment, the usual rest in peace, Doug, we miss you, yada, yada, all that sort of stuff. And I remember also kind of putting in there, because again, I'd only been playing guitar for a few years at that standpoint and still trying to really figure out everything that I was doing on the instrument. But I remember just being enamored just with the evolution of the band from Product of Society over to Beyond Recognition, and really wondering what Void Terra Firma sounded like, for me, obviously at that point, representing the missing link of this evolution. So I put the comment in the guest book, do you guys have any plans to get, Void Terra Firma up on the website available for download? I'd love to hear the missing link, yada, yada, yada. I get an email. I don't know if it was a week later, a couple weeks later. I'm not too sure, but I get an email back from the person who was apparently the webmaster of the website. And the email said, "Hey, thanks for your comment. We don't plan on making the album available for download, but as a thank you for being a fan, here's a temporary link to a page on the website to download it." So they gave me the album for free, which I thought was a pretty incredible gesture. And of course, me having the dial-up internet, you jump on, stay online for as long as you can, trying to download everything. And I grabbed all the songs except for one. I can't remember if I was having troubles with downloading the cover of Killers, the Iron Maiden song that was on Void Terra Firma, but that was the only one I couldn't get. And I guess I must have figured, oh, I'll just get back on the website the next day and I'll try to download it again. I go back on the next day and the temporary link had expired, or the page was taken down. So I emailed back this person. I said, "Hey, thank you so much for the link. I'm on dial-up internet though. I couldn't grab the last song, Killers. Is there any way you could send me an MP3? And if not, I understand. Thank you regardless." The person gets back to me and they said, "Yeah, no problem. Here's the link to the song. And I think I'd mentioned also either in the email or in the original guest book post that I played guitar and that I was really enjoying their music and trying to make sense of it and learn it and apply it to my own style. And I can't remember if the webmaster, I don't remember if they mentioned anything about the guitar playing or what, but I at least remember them saying to me, "Hey, thanks for being a fan." They might have said good luck in your guitar journey. I can't remember, but the one thing I do know for sure was at the end of this last email I got, after it said, thank you and all that, the signature or the salutation was "Cheers, Jim." And this immediately stood out to me because I remember my initial forays on the Defiance website, reading the news sections where there'd be like, a posting by Jim or comments from him or whatever. It would always sign off the same way: "Cheers, Jim." So it dawned on me, and I'm having to take a second to even just kind of digest it and smile and just remember it right now. But it dawned on me at that moment, it's like, it was Jim Adams, the guitar player, and he gave me the album for free and then went out of his way to send me the MP3 of Killers when I couldn't download it. And it's like, huh, and again, just I have to take a moment just to, really just remember that and smile, because just what a gesture and what an act of kindness. I know he didn't know that there was just a 16-year-old kid on the other side, a starry 16-year-old kid, if you will, starry-eyed, I should say. I know that he didn't know that there was that person who was on the other side, but, all these years later, as a 31-year-old, it's something that I never forgot. And, just really hits me harder that much more nowadays, or I shouldn't say hits me harder, but just stands out in my mind that much more nowadays because, I think just in this world that we live in where a lot of times, we're arguably more separated now than ever, just with, say political discussions or just, I think the nature of communication on the internet has really caused it to where we've kind of lost that personal touch with each other a lot of times. I just thought it was a huge thing for Jim to do that, just for some random fan on the internet. He could have said, because I think he mentioned also in his email that, the album's available in Japan, as an import. He could have easily said, "Hey, here's a link to it on Amazon or whatever, and you can buy it." But he sent it to me for free. And just, again, I never forgot that. So real quick, just wanted to make a mention of that and just say, thank you so much to Jim Adams if you ever see that. And thank you to the rest of the members of Defiance as well. Just, for the music over the years, obviously for the contributions that you've made to thrash metal. I've read that the band maybe potentially is reuniting. I think there were some rumors of it in 2019 that they were potentially going to reunite to play some shows, a couple maybe one-off festival things or whatever. And there was also some rumors about a new album being worked on. So I certainly would love to see it if it comes to light. And obviously, when and if it does come out, I'll be a day one listener, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. But yeah, so I just wanted to share like some memories of the band. Just again, my personal or the personal connection I think that I've had, loosely with Defiance over the years, and not only that, but just the influence. I've mentioned before several times, and obviously with this video, it's going to be of no surprise, but thrash metal is obviously the genre that I love the most. It's the genre that I play on guitar. Obviously, predominantly everything that I practice or write is thrash metal based. And Defiance was definitely a huge reason for that. I think when you're a kid and you're first listening to these songs by bands like Anthrax and Metallica, you certainly love the stuff, but you do start to get a little bit more of a curiosity, like who else is out there, and was there anybody maybe that did it, better or at least as well. and Defiance definitely did it just as well as the other bands. And I think in some ways they did do it better. There was definitely a technical execution in the music, and I think just the usage of the scales, and I think the fast soloing and just the clean playing. That's the big one too, just the clean playing. Um, I think in some ways they did do it better than Metallica and Anthrax, and maybe they don't get an awful lot of credit for that. But again, I at least wanted to make this video just to give them that credit that they deserve. So, not really sure what else to say, but I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up because I think that's enough for me. I've been going for about 20 minutes here. So, again, thank you so much to the band, just for your contributions to thrash metal, obviously for influencing me personally, and just, again, that gift that Jim Adams himself personally gave. So, if you ever see this, Jim, again, thank you so much. Thank you as well to the viewers for watching this. I hope you all have a great day.